Is that you?
No, it's not me. It's him.
The following contest
Should have
is
known.
scheduled for one fall. Making his way to
His
the ring,
aroma
weighing in
precedes
at
him here.
401 pounds. Here is
that breath?
No.
Booger.
Oh, yeah.
Well, bad breath's better than no breath at all.
Get the women and children to high ground. The hump's growing. Ooh.
What is that a donut?
No, it's not a donut. It's a donut.
The earthquake against Bastion Booger when we return after. Oh, stay with us for a WrestleMania report. Hey, get out of here! Get out of here!
Professional wrestling history is littered with failed characters, forgotten experiments, and creative misfires that were quickly abandoned and never spoken of again. So basically, wrestling has never been shy about bad ideas, but few wrestlers have carried the weight of so many of them as Mike Shaw. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, a period defined by excess and cartoon logic, Shaw became the unfortunate constant in a series of experiments that never had a chance to succeed. Time and again, he was asked to embody concepts that clashed with audience expectations, strained credibility, and placed show over substance. And yet, beneath the layers of gimmicks, costumes, and ill-conceived backstories was a dependable professional big man, one who showed up, followed instructions, and attempted to make sense of ideas that were fundamentally broken from the start. When the characters failed, they failed loudly, quickly, and memorably, often leaving Shaw to absorb the fallout. His story is not simply about bad gimmicks, but about how professional wrestling often treats its performers as disposable vessels for ideas that should never have left the drawing board. Born on May 9, 1957, in Marquette, Michigan, Mike Shaw was an accomplished multi-sport athlete long before entering professional wrestling. In high school, Shaw earned an exceptional 11 varsity letters across wrestling, football, and track and field. He became a heavyweight amateur wrestling champion in his senior year, competed as a defensive tackle in football, and showcased his strength in the shot put. After high school, Shaw briefly pursued a career in professional softball with the Milwaukee Schlitz of the American Professional Softball Association. When the league folded before its second season, while players were already in Florida for training, Shaw found himself at an unexpected crossroads. It was there that he met an older wrestler known as Farmer Bill, who encouraged him to consider professional wrestling. Acting on that advice, Shaw traveled to Massachusetts in 1979 to train under the legendary Killer Kowalski, whose demanding approach emphasized fundamentals over theatrics. Shaw began working small local shows, often under the name Mike Striker, that Kowalski promoted near the school, along with occasional WWWF television tapings as enhancement talent. Kowalski emphasized constant motion and aggression, shaping Shaw into a relentless heel built around pressure rather than flash. Though still new to the business, Shaw took the initiative to have publicity photos taken and mailed promotional packages to 30 different territories. The first to respond was Vancouver All-Star Wrestling, where Shaw's long journey truly began under the name Klondike Mike, a babyface lumberjack. Calgary's Stampede Wrestling was Shaw's next destination, and it would ultimately become the promotion most closely tied to his name. Shaw's early career in Calgary started slow, mainly being part of the lower end of the card. Looking for steadier work, Shaw accepted a booking in South Africa, adopting the name Big Ben Sharp. Though brief, the run proved significant, opening the door to an international circuit he would revisit multiple times in the years ahead. When he returned to Canada, Shaw found clarity by attaching himself to an act that was already generating real hostility from crowds. Aligning with the great Gama Singh as Makhan Singh, Mike Shaw became part of what would soon be known as Karachi Vice, a unit that finally gave him a defined identity and consistent heat, rather than another reset without direction. As part of Karachi Vice, Shaw became a central figure in Stampede Wrestling's most intense rivalries, engaging in long-running wars with the Hart family and their circle of allies, including Brian Pillman and the British Bulldogs. The feud elevated Shaw into the upper tier of the territory, where he frequently traded the North American Heavyweight Championship with Owen Hart. Those matches, built on speed versus size dynamics and sustained crowd investment, became a defining stretch of Shaw's career. In later years, Shaw would single out Owen Hart as one of his favorite opponents. That period in Stampede would be the last time Mike Shaw experienced anything resembling creative stability. His sustained work in Calgary caught the attention of WCW executive Jim Ross, and soon Shaw was brought to World Championship Wrestling, where his career took a sharp and permanent turn. Rather than building on his established identity as a physical, aggressive big man, WCW introduced him through a series of extended promotional vignettes, teasing the arrival of a new character, one that leaned heavily into the company's growing preference for exaggerated, cartoon-style personas. When the character finally debuted, Shaw appeared dressed in a straitjacket and was named Norman the Lunatic. For the first 6 months, the persona was presented as a heel, controlled and manipulated by manager Teddy Long. Eventually, the storyline shifted. Shaw was freed from that control and repositioned as a sympathetic babyface. Audiences responded immediately. Fans began bringing teddy bears to the arenas, throwing them into the ring as gestures of support. Shaw himself was initially resistant to the role. "To tell you the truth, when Norman started, I couldn't stand it," he later admitted. "I thought it was really silly. I really didn't like it at first. I didn't adapt well to it." What changed, Shaw explained, was the guidance he received behind the scenes. He credited Jim Ross, Terry Funk, and Kevin Sullivan with helping him shape the character into something workable. Once that adjustment happened, the audience fully embraced it. "After Norman became a character the fans really liked, I was getting 200 teddy bears a week," Shaw recalled. "In arenas, people were just bringing me teddy bears constantly, and I was donating them to children's hospitals. It really became a character they liked." In hindsight, Shaw believed the gimmick had far more longevity than it was given, comparing it to the legendary character, George the Animal Steele. This moment is crucial to understanding Shaw's career. Even when handed a deeply flawed concept, he found a way to make it connect. Any long-term plans for the character were abruptly derailed when Ole Anderson assumed control of WCW's booking and shifted the company's focus toward a more traditional wrestling-first presentation. The character was written off television in a brutal fashion, with a group of heels descending on him and beating him down in an unmistakable signal that the experiment was over. When Shaw resurfaced on WCW television, the change was jarring. Shaw appeared as Trucker Norm, a short-lived identity that carried little direction or momentum. Soon after, his contract expired, quietly closing the chapter on a run that had shown real promise before being cut short by shifting creative priorities. Following his departure from WCW, Shaw returned to Michigan, where he opened a wrestling school, promoted a handful of shows, and continued working on the independent circuit. He also took bookings abroad, including a stint in Mexico under the name Aaron Grundy, presented as the brother of Solomon Grundy, another example of Shaw's willingness to adapt to whatever role was available. During a break between trips, Shaw received a call from WWF executive J.J. Dillon, offering what was described as a tryout. Having already spent more than a decade in the business, Shaw initially found the phrasing insulting, but he accepted the opportunity. A meeting with Vince McMahon followed, and while McMahon responded positively to Shaw's size and appearance, he made it clear that any role would need to be built around a distinct creative concept. The first of those concepts was Friar Ferguson, a wrestling monk. The gimmick was short-lived. "I heard they got calls from different religious organizations thinking that it was terrible to have a monk on TV wrestling," Shaw later recalled. Almost as quickly as the idea was introduced, it was quietly abandoned, another reinvention discarded before it had a chance to find footing. The next reinvention would become the most famous and infamous of Mike Shaw's career. Bastion Booger did not begin as the grotesque figure audiences would ultimately see on WWF television. According to Shaw, the original concept envisioned something far more stylized, a sewer-dwelling, gargoyle-like creature clad in silver gear, complete with boots and a large horned mask. That version of the character, however, never made it past the planning stage. Vince McMahon reportedly felt the mask bore too close a resemblance to Vader, then working in WCW, and the idea was scrapped. In June 1993, Shaw was introduced as Bastion Booger, an intentionally repulsive character defined by slovenly behavior, exaggerated gluttony, and an appearance designed to provoke discomfort rather than intrigue. Dressed in ill-fitting gray and beige singlets tailored to exaggerate a hunched posture, Booger was presented less as a monster than as a joke. Shaw later suggested the drastic change may have been influenced, if not outright motivated, by management's dissatisfaction with his weight. In the ring, Booger found little upward mobility. The character achieved only marginal success and was primarily used as a jobber to establish stars. His most notable victory came via a clean pinfall over his old rival Owen Hart, a rare bright spot in an otherwise stagnant run. His most popular but an also brief feud was with Bam Bam Bigelow. The story was built around an angle in which Booger developed an obsessive infatuation with Bigelow's valet, Luna Vachon, a storyline that further emphasized the character's cartoonish and uncomfortable nature. With Bastion Booger, the pattern that had followed Shaw for years reached its most extreme expression. Whatever remnants of credibility he had rebuilt after earlier reinventions were now buried beneath a presentation designed not to elevate him, but to elicit ridicule. Reflecting on his time as Bastion Booger, Shaw admitted, "I think the Booger character would have worked if it got over as a heel, but my heart wasn't into it. I didn't like the character. I didn't like the outfit. Don't get me wrong. I was happy to be in the WWF. It was something I wanted to do my whole career. I made a good living there." Even in hindsight, he recognized that his career concluded on a low note, with much of his best work, his time in Calgary, his matches in South Africa, largely unseen by the widest audiences. After leaving the ring, Shaw remained connected to wrestling through his school, while also working in security and public relations at the Ojibwa Casino. Outside of his professional life, he built a family with his wife Kelly, whom he met while touring the Canadian Maritimes. Sadly, Mike Shaw passed away from a pulmonary embolism on September 11, 2010, at the age of 53. His career serves as a striking reminder of the fragile line between talent and opportunity in professional wrestling. He possessed the size, skill, and professionalism to succeed in almost any era, yet repeated missteps in creative direction often overshadowed his abilities. While history may remember him most for the outlandish gimmicks that defined his later years, a closer look reveals a dedicated performer whose contributions, though sometimes buried under costumes and storylines, deserve recognition. Shaw's legacy endures not in the characters he portrayed, but in the commitment and heart he brought to the ring every night.